stop scrolling. Because what investigators just revealed in the Lilly and Jack case is one of the strangest developments yet. Something that doesn't match the timeline, doesn't match the witness accounts, and doesn't match anything the public has been told until now. If you've been following this case, brace yourself, because this new detail changes the tone of the entire investigation. 6-year-old Lilly and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan vanished from their rural home in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia, a place so
Officers poured over every second of that audio. They matched Getty's voice to archived live stream recordings, cross-checked metadata, and pinpointed his IP address, tying him to the very day Lilly and Jack vanished. What began as a missing person search turned into a forensic operation, examining Getty's digital footprint.
Not even a faint one. Pointed toward where the children might have gone or how they could have left the property. The disappearance felt impossible from the very beginning. 2 young kids, both too small to travel far on their own, vanished without leaving behind a single reliable sighting or a single piece of evidence that clearly explains what happened. It is this eerie emptiness, this complete lack of explanation, that has haunted the case and kept investigators searching for answers long after the initial hours passed. For months, search teams, drones, dogs, underwater units, and investigators have combed forests, fields, and wells.
The mischief charges under Section 430. It accused Getty's of willfully misleading volunteers and authorities regarding the children's whereabouts, thereby endangering their lives. While mischief charges historically apply to property crimes, the RCMP's legal advisors deemed this case exceptional. Getty's claim spurred
helicopters and drones surveyed from above, capturing footage used to compare terrain changes over time. Search dogs followed scent trails as far as they reliably could, while dive teams checked bodies of water, not because evidence pointed them there, but because nothing pointed anywhere. And despite all of that effort, not a single confirmed clue surfaced. No clothing, no toys, no tracks, no objects tied to the children. Nothing that gives a clear direction. And now, the update released just hours ago has made everything even stranger. Because instead of simplifying the situation or narrowing it down, this new information widens the unanswered questions even more. The absence of evidence is no longer just unusual. Investigators now acknowledge that it's inconsistent with the simplest explanations. Where the search should have produced at least something, it produced nothing. And that nothing is now the biggest clue of all. Investigators quietly confirmed a detail that most people completely overlooked. The timeline given by adults at the home does not fully align with what digital and door activity analysis suggests. This single discrepancy, subtle as it may sound, has become one of the most significant developments in the entire case. Up until now, most public discussions have focused on the physical search, the forests, the wells, the fields, or on whether there were any unusual vehicles or suspicious movements near the property. But behind the scenes, investigators were doing something far more precise, cross-checking every minute of the reported timeline against digital records from the home, nearby devices, and the surrounding area. And what they found did not line up perfectly. Let me repeat that the timeline itself is now under internal review. This means that one of the core pillars of the original account, the sequence of when events supposedly happened, is no longer being treated as solid fact. When police question the timeline, it's because something in the digital footprint, whether the door sensor, a device activation, a vehicle timestamp, or even a gap that shouldn't exist, contradicts or challenges what was verbally reported. And in cases like this, even small inconsistencies matter. A few minutes unaccounted for can completely reshape investigators' understanding of what took place. It's not the location that's being questioned. It's not the weather conditions that day. It's not a mysterious vehicle lacking identification. It's the timeline. And that changes everything. When investigators begin re-examining the timing of events, it means they're no longer only asking, where did the children go? They're now asking, when exactly did anything happen? And was the original story even complete? This is the strongest hint yet that the investigation has shifted inward, focusing less on external possibilities and more on verifying the accuracy, consistency, and completeness of the accounts given by the people who were present. This pivot signals that the answers the RCMP now seeks may lie not in the environment, but in the timeline itself and in the individuals who shaped it. Next, something the public thought was settled is now back on the table. A detail that many assumed was already confirmed, already checked, already ruled in or ruled out, is being re-examined from the ground up. And it's not a small detail. It's tied directly to the only supposed exit point the children could have used without being noticed. The sliding glass back door, the one the stepfather claimed the kids used because it was silent, is now under renewed scrutiny. For months, the public accepted this door as part of the explanation. It was quiet, easy to open, and theoretically a way the kids could have slipped out without alerting anyone. But investigators have now confirmed something important. They cannot verify whether that door was actually used at the time the children disappeared. This completely changes how the scene is interpreted. Why is this significant? Because if an exit point cannot be verified, it cannot be assumed. And in an investigation where every detail matters, assumptions are dangerous. So the RCMP went back and examined the area again, not because they missed something, but because the total lack of confirming evidence stands out on its own. There were no footprints in the area surrounding the door that indicated two small children stepped outside. There were no fingerprints on the glass or handle that provided a usable direction or pattern. There was no physical disturbance, no marks, drag lines, small impressions, or displaced material that would normally appear when children walk through a commonly used exit. Nothing, not a single element around that doorway confirms use. And this raises the biggest question yet. If the kids didn't go out the so-called silent door, where did they go? And more importantly, who saw them last in a way that has not been fully explained? This is not just a small inconsistency. It's the kind of gap that forces investigators to reconsider every assumption tied to that moment. Who was present, what they reported, and what the physical evidence does not support. Remember that early witness who said they saw a girl holding a younger boy's hand approaching a woman beside an older tan sedan? At the time, that tip spread fast. People clung to it because it offered the first possible outside lead, something beyond the property, something that suggested the children might have been seen alive after leaving the home. For weeks, that sighting floated around social media and local discussion groups as one of the only potential breakthroughs. But here's where the case takes an even stranger turn, and where the new update reshapes how that sighting is viewed entirely. Investigators have now confirmed that the tip remains unverified, and more importantly, that the description provided by the witness does not match any known person connected to the family, the neighborhood, or the broader community the RCMP checked against. That means the woman described isn't a relative, isn't a neighbor, and isn't someone investigators can tie to any expected pattern of movement near the Sullivan home. If the sighting was accurate, then two critical elements, the woman and the vehicle, remain completely unidentified. And that raises several major implications. If the sighting was real, the woman is still unidentified. The vehicle is still unidentified. And the timeline of that reported moment does not cleanly match the newly reevaluated internal timeline investigators are now working from. In cases like this, mismatched timing is not a small issue. It can change the direction of the entire investigation. The RCMP now has to consider whether the sighting came earlier than reported, later than reported, or whether the interpretation of what the witness saw was influenced by uncertainty or distance. So investigators are left with two possibilities. Either the sighting was unrelated, meaning the girl and boy were completely different children, coincidentally fitting a similar description, or the original timeline was far more complicated than anyone first thought, meaning the sequence of events surrounding Lilly and Jack's disappearance might contain gaps, errors, or missing pieces. Either option is unsettling. It leaves the investigation straddling two realities. One where a potential lead points to an unknown adult, and another where inconsistencies in the timeline suggest deeper, more complex questions about what actually happened that day. The RCMP says the case remains active, complex, and far from cold. But this new shift, examining the timeline and rechecking the home's exits, is a sign of something important. It shows investigators are no longer treating the earliest details as settled facts. They are peeling everything back to the very beginning, reconsidering the sequence of events, and challenging assumptions that were previously accepted as routine. In major investigations, this kind of return to the foundational elements is never random. It signals that something in those early accounts, those early observations, or those early explanations may hold the key to understanding what truly happened. What this shift really means is that investigators believe the answer will come from the early moments, not from the outer perimeter. They believe that clarity will come from inconsistencies, not from distance traveled. If the children had wandered far, the search radius would produce something, a trace, an item, a clue, even the smallest piece of physical evidence. But the continued absence of any such trace has pushed investigators back toward the moments inside and immediately around the home, focusing on what was said, what was done, and what didn't match the data.